what, 15, almost 20 levels right now in that one zone. What we'd like to do is actually use the zone and spread you out through it so the quests flow a little bit better. So as you can see here, like a zone like Hillsbrad has got 5 levels. It leads into Arathi. And then what you're used to before, you'd go somewhere else, but now we're going to cut open a path into Hinterlands and let you actually flow through that direction. And one thing to note on Hillsbrad there, it looks like the Alliance finally lost South Shore. I think things are changing.
We were there today. Nobody was defending it, so that's what happened.
So here you can get a shot of the concept of the flow. Now it's a little bit different. You can see how we're trying to cover 5 levels, and things are just going to feel different. And that was our goal here. We wanted to make sure that leveling up through the classic zones felt like a new experience, and it really fit with what's happening with the Cataclysm. It's affected the whole world, and we really want to get that through to everyone, not only in just the quest, but in the way the zones look and they feel. So we're going to go into a few details now on some of the actual zones. We'll start with the Barrens. So here's a look at the Barrens as it exists right now. And then here's a shot of it after the Cataclysm is hit. So basically it's split the Barrens in half, right down the middle. Here's another view to the south. And I think a lot of you might remember a character called Gnarlax from Wailing Caverns. One of his goals that he was trying to do, he was actually trying to regrow the Barrens. Well, it looks like he might have been successful finally.
And you always thought he was just trying to get you lost in Wailing Caverns. He actually had a plan.
If he could ever find his way out, he might be able to do this. So Desolace, here's just a couple looks at Desolace. So Desolace is always a dark, kind of dreary zone. The Cataclysm has actually cracked open the shore and allowed water into the zone in new ways, which has allowed it to regrow. So you're going to see really big changes in these zones that are really going to affect things that you've never kind of been there and never had that experience in this place before. Now, another thing we're doing is the Cataclysm is actually bringing up new pieces of land that might not have even been there before. So, for example, here we've got a new piece of terrain that players will be able to quest on. So Darkshore. Darkshore is a zone we had always wanted to get back to just because it's kind of a long, skinny zone. And I think you've all been there with those super long 20-minute runs to turn in quests in Darkshore, up and down. So this is a great place to kind of really get into and figure out how we wanted to reflow the quests and have it feel great. So here's Aberdeen before and here's Aberdeen after. It's completely destroyed. So they've been forced to move north and set up a new camp, which actually ends up being one of our new quest hubs. And then here's south, here's Zoram Strand. Like Alex mentioned earlier, Garrosh has come back and he's really excited about spreading out the horde. So you can see like he's kind of just moving all over Azeroth. He basically means business. So here's a little bit more info on Stone Talon. Now, this place might look familiar. That cave down there is the cave that leads into Ashenvale from Stone Talon. And now the goblins have shown up and just cut the whole thing out. The goblins, they don't stand for a little cave. They just cut the whole thing open. So here's a shot of Charred Vale. Cataclysm had a big effect here. Basically broke the whole shoreline down, and you can get down to the water over there now.
It's now the even more charred Vale.
So here's a shot of Ajara. This is Ajara Crater as it exists now. Ajara itself as a zone is actually going to end up being the new Goblin 10 to 20 zone. So when the goblins showed up, they really wanted to change things around, so they just decided to move the mountain.
That's right. Say goodbye to the 3 quests there.
So they basically turned this into a giant quarry here. So in the fact of making the old world flyable, we basically had to go back to all of the cities and do revisions to the cities as well. So here's a shot of Undercity as you know it now. And then here's a shot of it now with its flyable. It's all completely there. Before the Great Sundering. After the Sundering hit, and water flooded Azeroth, it actually ended up on the sea floor, and it's been down there for a number of years, and only recently has it just started to come to light with the Cataclysm. So here you can see a little view of the layout, and this is how we start all the zones. We basically brainstorm meetings, and then we get things going on paper and get a feel for what we want to do. So you can see in the center there's the Abyssal Maw Vortex, and that's actually the entrance into the Abyssal Maw, which is the elemental plane of water, and we're planning to have 2 dungeons down there for players to explore. So one thing we were talking about earlier is the concept of how are we going to do an underwater zone. Well, we're planning to get some new tech, and the way it's going to work is you're actually going to be able to have combat on the sea floor underwater, but it will play just as if you were on land. So you'd be walking around on the sea floor, minding your own business. You'll be able to fight just like you normally would on land. But then when you want to swim, you'll actually just be able to swim right up into water, like seamlessly between the two. When you land back on the seafloor, then you'll go back to normal ground gameplay. So you won't have to worry about trying to deal with fighting underwater the whole time. We're also planning to have selected areas in Vashj'ir that are actually indoor, kind of like these big, there's creatures down there that no one really knows a lot about yet, but they're ancient, and they've been there for a long time, and we're going to find out what's happening with them through the quest flow in the zone. And the way that gameplay we want it to play out is that we'd like you to be able to feel like questing here is just going to feel like you were in a normal ground zone. We're also going to introduce underwater mounts. So you're going to have a mount that you'll be able to use to get all around. I think we've got a turtle in the game right now that's an underwater mount, but it's kind of slow. The mounts you're going to get down here will be like normal flying speed mounts that you would have, but you'll be able to use them underwater. So here's a little bit of concept art of Vashj'ir. We're really shooting for a colorful zone here, but we also, you gotta remember, this is the ocean floor of Azeroth. Going through the Abyssal Maw actually takes you into the elemental plane of water, so those 2 places are gonna feel very different. In the background there, you can kind of get a little concept view of some of the domes. All right, let's move on to Deep Home. So Deep Home is like Tom was trying to explain, it's not actually connected to Azeroth, it's in the elemental plane of Earth. The connection that it has to Azeroth is where Deathwing actually broke through the ceiling and actually came into Azeroth, thereby causing the Cataclysm. And players will actually be able to use that scar